Welcome ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and today we are going to be talking about Battlefield Hardline, and is it good? I say that in the form of a question because, yeah, the game's good, but there are certain things that it could have done to make it even better. I don't think anybody expected this game to be like the best Battlefield game of all time, like the greatest thing in the history of things. But in the end, it was like, I guess some people, because it was going from a military kind of perspective of more like cops versus robbers, that a lot of people expected, okay, it's kind of changing the formula a little bit. And it kind of does in its campaign mode, but I mean, like, there are still certain things that Battlefield Hardline does that it is expected to do as a Battlefield game. In the respect of Battlefield Hardline doing what a Battlefield game is expected to do, it does it well. It's when it reaches to try and be different, does it maybe stumble a little bit. So to kind of start talking about this, I definitely want to start bringing it up the way I kind of experienced it, and I jumped right into the story mode. Because I was really interested to see how the story was, because for the first time, this game wasn't only being developed by DICE anymore, it was actually being headed by Visceral Games, and Visceral Games is the people who made the Dead Space games. And I really liked the Dead Space games. I thought that the story element in the Dead Space games was really good. The problem probably was Dead Space is a third-person shooter, or at least from a third-person perspective. It's a survival horror game. So then they jump into a first-person shooter that Battlefield Hardline is. You gotta expect that there are some odd things that are weird about this whole development decision. Even when this beta came out, a lot of people played it and they were like, okay, there is something weird. Like, I don't really think that this game is really kind of popping to me. There were some mechanics that may have been a little bit weird. So EA, the parent company of both Visceral and DICE, decided, okay, well, whatever Visceral is doing isn't really what we would like to see, so we're going to bring DICE in, the guys who are supposed to be developing Battlefield games that are currently working on Star Wars Battlefront. Please don't mess that up. I am super excited about that game. But Visceral is not doing what we kind of envisioned, so we need DICE to come in and kind of help them out. So that's what happened, and in that respect, I think because DICE was involved, this game feels a lot like a Battlefield game. But even still, Visceral Games doing really good story elements with Dead Space, I was really interested to see what they would do with Battlefield Hardline, so I wanted to find that out immediately. Now, it's really hard to kind of talk about the story mode without going into spoilers, so I'll say that for a portion of the campaign, you play as a cop, and for the other portion, you play as a criminal. But you don't really play as a criminal, like you don't do criminal things, and that's kind of the first big negative for me. I expected this game to feel a lot like a Payday kind of experience, where like you're going into the bank, you're taking hostages, you're robbing the vault. I just really feel like it was a missed opportunity. Like the story element really took hold of the game and sent the criminal side over into a different direction than you would expect it to be. Like, yeah, the story arc was fine, the story was fine, the characters, most of them were pretty good, and the end result of the story mode of this game was good. I just expected something different, and when I didn't get what I expected, I was a little disappointed. Like, I can't fault the game for something it doesn't have. Like, it did good in what it did, but it's like, could have been a little bit better if they had gone this different route. The thing that I had in my head was like, okay, Battlefield Hardline is going to be awesome if they have a complete campaign mode, the cop storyline, and this one cop is trying to hunt down this one criminal. It runs parallel with the criminal storyline where you play as the criminal that is being hunted by said cop. So it's like these two separate campaigns from these two different perspectives, and this criminal is doing certain things while this cop is doing certain things. It's like you're good and evil, but maybe good and evil isn't so, like, the line is blurry. And the story mode that we end up getting actually touches on that. Like, maybe the good guys and the bad guys aren't good and aren't bad. It's just there's a blurry line there. But still, it's like, I feel like they could have done so much better if they really embraced the criminal side. Like, I didn't really feel like a criminal. I just felt like a guy doing a thing. Again, it's hard to talk about it without getting into spoilers, so I'm going to probably stop the conversation in terms of story there, but the story is pretty good. Like, I feel like the story was really helped out by some of the really good characters. One of them is Tyson. I like Tyson's character because he doesn't take everything too seriously. Like, certain things are like kind of fun to him. Like, when things are throwing down, yes, he is serious, and of course, he's going to focus on what he needs to focus on. But most of the time, he doesn't really take things too seriously, and I liked some of the dialogue that was in the game with him. But probably one of my favorite characters in this game is Boomer. I really like his dialogue and the way he was written. Like, once again, he doesn't take things too seriously, but he's a very technical kind of guy. Like, he has a plan before he goes about something. And I really like this one scene where he comes in, and you have to kind of get his laptop from somewhere, and when you bring it back, you're like, all right, let's leave. And we're like, all right, where's that one guy? And he goes, don't worry about him. And he just pops up from the back seat.
I want my laptop.
I don't know, it was a stupid scene, but it made me laugh, and I was just like, all right, you're actually paying attention to the characters. Like, you're not just throwing them in there like, here's the tech guy. But there are other good characters that you meet in the game as well. Like, this one girl that you meet up with, and you meet in, like, the latter half of the game, and she's kind of crazy, but she's not really. Like, she's gonna do what she feels she needs to do, but she is, like, kind of have, like, that she goes nuts sometimes. And I was like, okay, that's also good writing. Like, I like that character, too. The thing that I actually don't like is that she's not in the game for very long. Like, she pops up, and then she's gone, and you never see her again. And I wish we would see more of her. Like, if there's like a Battlefield Hardline 2, then I would like to see this girl return. But there are some other characters that I actually really didn't feel anything for her. Kai, which is the partner of the main character, like, I couldn't like her and I couldn't dislike her. Like, I feel like the writing was all over the place. There were certain things that they did with the character that made me, as the player, be like, oh, well, that's a very bad thing to do. And then you turn around and you're like, okay, well, that was a very nice thing for you to do. Like, I feel like the writing had no idea if they wanted to put a good or bad spin on Kai. And then there's Dawes. Dawes is the captain of the police force, and I feel like every time he's on screen, he's saying something important, but I don't care because I don't feel like the actor cares. The voice actor for this guy is probably somebody that went into the booth, read it, and then that was it. I am just reading the lines off of this piece of paper, and hopefully it is good and essential to the plot to kind of move this game along. It was just that there was no effort that I felt on the side of the voice actor, so I cared nothing about the character. Like, there were good characters in the game, there were bad characters in the game, and the good characters really brought it up, but the bad characters were kind of weighing it down, so you can take or leave some of them, but in the end, the story was actually not bad. It was actually pretty good. I actually did like the gameplay that accompanied the single player, because usually in Battlefield games, there's really high action, explosions all over the place, helicopters falling out of the sky, you're shooting at a lot of enemies, and yes, there are gunfights in this game. There is a first-person shooting aspect to this game. Some missions are more intense than others, but a lot of times you're going to be stealthing. You're going to be moving slowly and quietly. It's a different kind of pace with a Battlefield game. It's like you're moving very slowly through an area, trying to take out these guys quietly so that they don't alert the other guys. Like, you have a little mini map on the bottom left of the screen, and you can see where your enemies are and kind of like their line of sight and like that kind of cone thing. And you want to stay out of that line of sight because if you get detected, everybody else in the area is going to see you and they're going to start shooting at you. And then you got to fight back. But one of the cool mechanics that I actually liked when I was playing as the cop is that you could actually flash your badge and kind of get the enemy to surrender. Like, if you get to jump on them and you tell them to freeze, it's like they'll put their hands up and they'll drop their weapon, and then you can actually run up to them and arrest them. Now, you can do this to up to like 3 people, but you gotta like keep your gun on each one and make sure that a little meter doesn't fill up. It's like helping control the situation, and I felt like as a cop, that entire thing worked so well. But then when that flips to the criminal side of the campaign, I felt like it was a little out of place. Like, you're not flashing a badge anymore, you're just pointing at the guy, but even still, it's like, I mean, if I was a criminal and I saw another criminal telling me to freeze, I would just turn around and shoot him. Like, there's something about a cop telling you to freeze that makes you want to freeze. Like, yeah, you can kind of spin it to be like, okay, this guy has to jump on me, he's got a gun to the back of my head, I'm not going to be an idiot and turn around, I'm going to drop my weapon. But then you can arrest guys, and I was like, okay, that's a little weird. And then there's also this little device that you can use to scan the area, like you can look for collectibles or tag enemies. But one of the cool things that I actually really enjoyed was that you can find certain enemies that had like a warrant for their arrest. And if you find guys with these arrest warrants, you can actually take them down and leave them, and you'll get like a bonus in points. This will help you level up faster so that you can get better gear when you go and you have like these little like loadout boxes you can go to in the middle of missions, and you're like, all right, well, I want this gun and this gun and this gun and this gun. But again, it's like having access to police files that allow me to see who has an arrest warrant out for them as a criminal doesn't seem to fit. But it was a good mechanic because I used it a lot. When I went about an area, I was very quiet. I was very meticulous. I made sure I knew which guy had an arrest warrant out for him, and I basically arrested everybody on a specific level sometimes. And a lot of times you get spotted and a gunfight breaks out, which is fine. And I actually let it happen. Like, if I was going for a guy and then I got spotted, I was like, okay, well then everybody's gonna die now. There are even some areas where there's even an alarm that you can disable. And I got a very kind of Far Cry vibe from that, because in Far Cry there are these outposts, and in the outposts are bad guys, but then there's also an alarm system. So you're sitting up on a vantage point and you're tagging everybody and you're trying to figure out where the alarm system is so that when you move in and you're planning your path, you can take out the alarm system and kind of quiet it down to prevent reinforcements and from alerting everybody else in the area. It was good. Like, it had like benefits of this game, benefits of this game, and it was mixed into just a solid campaign, and it was a fun campaign. Like, I would absolutely start this campaign up on a harder difficulty and then make sure I go after every single collectible. Because the cool thing about the collectible is that it does something that I actually like other games to do, which is when you pick up the collectible, it adds more to the story and the plot. Like, let's just say, for example, as a cop, I was trying to find this one guy, and then I'm looking in the area where he usually hangs out, and I see like, okay, there's a computer right there, and the computer is an email, and it shows the email conversation between him and somebody else. It adds more depth to the characters, and it adds more depth to the actual plot that's going on. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting something out of these collectibles rather than it's just like, collect the random horse statues, which provides nothing. I'm just collecting them all, and I don't like those kind of collectibles. And that's essentially the story mode of this game, the single player experience. Like, it's good. Certain things are a little out of place, like the ability to access to see who has an arrest warrant out for them, and arresting dudes doesn't seem like something a criminal would want to do. Like, yeah, you can put a kind of a little bit of a spin on it that says, okay, you're just restraining the guy to make sure he doesn't become a problem later. But even still, it was like, I feel weird doing this. It made more sense as a cop. I actually like doing it as a cop, but now as a criminal, and I don't really, yeah. But what about the multiplayer? The multiplayer is what you would expect. Once again, Battlefield Hardline. Battlefield's in the title, so what you would expect in the multiplayer from a Battlefield game is in there. There's guns, there's vehicles, there's lots of destruction, and it's all pretty good. Like, it's a solid gameplay mechanic. There's nothing bad about it. It's just nothing special either. There are the Hardline game modes. There are like 5 total Hardline game modes, and each one of them having their own little specific objective. Like, go and grab this pile of money and deposit it in a vault. Like, protect the hostages and make sure none of the police rescue any of them. And there are no respawns in that game mode. Just when I'm playing that game, okay, yeah, the game modes are cool, and I will give the multiplayer that. Yes, the Hardline game modes are actually pretty cool. The multiplayer is exactly what you would expect from a Battlefield game, and just really nothing more other than the new game modes, which is what every new game should have anyway. Of course, there are new maps, and of course, it's a Battlefield game, so the maps are large. And of course, you have your standard team deathmatch and conquest, which is my favorite Battlefield game mode. But still, it's like nothing about the multiplayer really kind of pops to me, and that's kind of the point. Like, I mean, like, kind of stumbled a little bit. I'm not saying it outright failed in the areas that it tried to strive for, but it did stumble a little bit. Like, yes, it tried to give you a little bit of a better story, but it went in a weird direction that I really hoped that it kind of didn't. And it gave you some cool, slower mechanics, but then it felt weird and unnatural when you were playing as the criminal than when you were playing as a cop. And the multiplayer, aside from the new game modes, is nothing new. Is Battlefield Hardline a good game? Yes, it is. I would actually recommend fans of Battlefield to continue to play this game. But it's not a must-own game. I'm not telling you that, oh my God, Battlefield Hardline is so good, you need to go out and buy it right now. No, I say that for Ori and the Blind Forest. I don't tell anybody to do that for Battlefield Hardline. But it is good. Don't twist my words to saying that Battlefield is a bad game. It was just something that I kind of expected different things from, and I didn't get those different things, so I was like, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.